If you want something done right, you've got to do it 32 times. I have an old cotton duvet cover that's too small for me now. I'm going to give it a new life as a dress, but to cover the stains, I've decided to dye it first. There are so many methods for dyeing with avocado, and I had no idea which method would be best for my fabric. So first thing I did was reach out to my other textile savvy friends for help, as well as do some more of my own research. I got a lot of great advice, and I narrowed my variables down to the following categories: mordants, timing, and playing around with patterns. For mordants, I learned that soy milk would be a great option because avocado dye sticks better to protein fibers. Since cotton is a cellulose fiber, soaking it in soy milk first would coat the fabric with the soy proteins and mimic protein fibers. The only issue is that for the soy milk method, you need to soak your fabric in the milk, then let it dry and cure for a whole week. I wanted to see if that week of curing time made a difference, so I also decided to include a sample where I soak it in the soy milk, let it dry, and then immediately dye it. For both samples, I used a 1:5 ratio of soy milk to water and soaked the samples overnight before dyeing. Alum is also a very common choice for most natural dyes, so I figured I should try that as well. I used a 15% of the weight of fiber for my calculations. Finally, I wanted to see what would happen if I went without a mordant. These I will soak in water before adding them to the dye bath. For making the dye liquor, I was told adding a little red wine would help shift the color to more of a red hue. I also know that leaving the avocado pits in the dye overnight will help deepen the color. So I made 4 samples of the dye liquor itself, one with the pit immediately removed after the dye was made, one with the pit left in overnight and a splash of wine, one with the pit left in overnight, one with the pit immediately removed and a splash of wine. Should I leave the sample in the dye overnight to get the most color possible? Should I try a shibori dye method for a more unique pattern? Should I dye it before I fold it so the pattern would be more subtle? For the samples, I decided to either soak it overnight or soak for an hour, remove and dry it, fold it into a triangle, and then put it back in the dye overnight. Which means my sample chart ended up looking something like this. If you want something done right, you've got to do it 32 times. So when I finally dyed everything, I needed to be sure I could differentiate the samples. So I labeled the dye jars, and I also added notches to the top of the sample fabrics. 1 notch was for soy that dried 1 week. 2 notches was for soy that I then dyed directly. 3 notches was for alum. No notches at all was for no pre-mordant. So unfortunately for the shibori style samples, I had the best intentions. I put them back in the dye to soak overnight, and I got a little depressed and I didn't go back to the jars for a few days. So unfortunately, they got a little moldy and the pattern wasn't very distinct because they had soaked for too long. That being said, in the end, I decided I wanted a more solid color for the piece I was making anyway, but just a little moment of truth for you folks. That's why the final samples I'll be showing you are just the pure dyed samples. So the samples that are a little bit more pink were the ones that were dyed with some red wine added to the liquor, and the samples that are a little bit more orange are the samples that were just purely the avocado pit. They're both very beautiful. I'm not sure which one I want to use for my final fabric. Which one's your favorite? Let me know so I can have a little bit of help deciding. I'm so indecisive. Hopefully when I can finally pick which color I want my dress to be, I'll have a video out going into more detail on my dye method for the whole duvet. And then after that, the plan is to sew it into a summer dress. So thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you have a nice day.